In the year 2024, we have to worry about a lot of things. Whether or not the McDonald's snack wrap will ever come back out, if Arizona teas will ever stay 99 cents, and of course, if that product you like actually uses AI. Of course, none of these things have anything immediately to do with the Gunk, as this game came out in December of 2021, but I believe that there is something to be said about how art is very interpretive and very prescient to today. Coming from Image-Informed Games and published by Thunderful for the Xbox consoles and PC, The Gunk is a visually striking game where you land on a desolate planet devoid of almost all life. In its place, you'll find a hazardous and parasitic growth that's coined as... That's right, you guessed it! The Gunk. I'm sorry, too much Miss Rachel for me. And while I'll get into what works and what doesn't for me personally, I wanted to open up with that this game's message really feels more poignant than it probably ever did. I mean, obviously the creators have their own interpretations, and that's that life, and therefore humanity and creativity, must be allowed to grow and improve, and strive for better even with imperfections, rather than snuffing it all out in favor of order and uniformity. To me, with the modern lens of AI and its sometimes harmful use in all facets of art, I can't help but respect the game for getting that message across. That being said, let's break it down into the usual categories of the story, the gameplay, the visual, and the sound designs. So let's start with that story for just a second. So I've already kind of given you the basic synopsis. The main idea is that the two main characters, Randy and Bex, come here to find something to turn a profit, resources, something or other, and they end up getting into this whole quest to save the planet, or at least you do. And in doing so, I have to say, even from right off the bat, I thought the two characters had great chemistry together. It really felt like they had been traveling across the galaxy together, and it felt like they'd had experiences together. And I think that's where this narrative is at the strongest, that relationship between the two of them. It's very Naughty Dog in that sense, but then there are points, I won't lie, where I felt the writing, and even at some points the voice acting, which I'll talk more about sound in a second, kind of turned from really good to meh at times. The story was predictable, the pacing was a little off at certain points, and a lot of that comes down to the way the gameplay is set up in certain sections. But really, there's not much more to take away. I will say that this game was super predictable. Once you got things going, I was calling every key plot point from the very beginning. And anything I wasn't predicting right off the bat genuinely didn't feel earned in the same way that the rest of it did. Call it good foreshadowing for some and not for the other, but there were events in the story and character decisions and moments that just, I don't want to say they didn't make sense, but they just felt like they came from completely out of nowhere. Regardless, though, I think this is a cute little story, and it's a feel-good story at the end of the day. And, when talking about this game's message, or at least what it meant to me, I think the story doesn't hold that back, and it supplements it well enough. Now, I talked a little bit about how the pacing of the story suffers from the gameplay itself. So let's talk about the gameplay. So, really, the core loop of the game is you can suck things. So, with Riley Reid Simulator, is that a good joke? Okay, I don't know. But as you have this device that can suck everything up. You can either gather some resources, not in like a survival type way. There's just a few specific crafting components around the world that you can collect, as well as you can eliminate and, capture gunk as well. And with very minor variations, there's a few little plant seeds that you can plant in certain spots and they grow and make some little, mushrooms for platforming. Very minuscule stuff like that that honestly doesn't even get used to its full potential until the end of the game. So once again, I have to really strive and focus in on the idea that the gameplay suffers for that. Whether it be the linear environments or the few environments where it really opens up for a couple of those wider area puzzles, it always felt like you're doing the same thing and slogging to do the same things until they actually got really inventive with the puzzles in that last, I would say, final run section of the game. So you see the glimmers of shining through that is just really awesome. And that's the immediate loop. But one other gripe that I actually had was you are introduced to the idea that collecting those resources I mentioned will actually allow you to upgrade yourself, your gadgets, whether that be your area of effect for your Riley reading, or perhaps how many hits you can take. There's, a good number, and everything makes sense within the world. Like, all of these upgrades I kind of wanted, but what got me was that they introduced the upgrade station, and you can't make an upgrade off the bat. Like, you literally have to go through another 10-15 minutes of gameplay, which was fine, but it was just like a weird, I don't know, bad tutorialization. Like it felt like there should have been resources right there to collect that you should have been able to very quickly, while it's still fresh on your mind that you can do this, upgrade. Now, mind you, I'm not an idiot. I understood the idea. You can always track what resources you have and what upgrades you can make from your menu at any time. All you have to do is return to your ship with a very useful fast travel system, actually. As you get through each of the levels, you can go back to the ship and return to any of these levels at any given time. That's really cool. But really, with the gameplay, I left wanting so much more. I don't know how else to explain it, but there just wasn't enough to do in the gameplay time that I had. I mean, I feel like the length of the game justifies the story, but I don't feel like it justifies how little gameplay variety there was. Again, with the mechanics that there are presented, it got a little inventive towards the end, but it felt like they saved it all for the final act. Now, I know I've kind of come off kind of negatively to those last two things, but one thing I really want to talk very strongly about was the visual style, with some minor gripes here and there, but overall, I think I really enjoyed how visually striking this game was. So even just looking at the box art for the game, and pretty much immediately once you enter the game, the first thing you're going to notice is that each of these characters that you're seeing are subject to a very stylized, almost caricature-looking version of what you would assume a human might look like. And it's just so interesting. I do wish there was a little bit tighter animation quality on some of it, like, maybe a little better lip syncing for some of the dialogue or something like that. But otherwise, I thought the models themselves genuinely looked great. And in the cutscenes, it looked pretty good. That being said, I think my absolute favorite aspect of this game, visually speaking, is the oddly satisfying nature of collecting the gunk. I mean, there's something about just vacuuming a whole room full of this gunk stuff that's flying and all over the walls everywhere. And whether it's the most intricate puzzle to try to eliminate some of it or just sucking it up normally, I never really completely got tired of it. I will say that I was longing for more a lot of the time, but no matter what, I never found myself getting bored of that. And I feel like the game leaned on it a little too much, but damn, it was just a really satisfying thing that's supported very well by the visual style of the game. There's a huge emphasis on how the planet's dying and, how gray and dulled out all of the colors are within the world. But then once you clear an area of all the gunk, then it's almost like a blight is lifted from the land. All the color returns and all the plants regrow. And that's when you get a true visual showcase of the intricacies of the level design here. And it's really well done. And in that way, I have to say that visually this game was a treat most of the time. As I'd like to round back around, even to the few enemies that you do face in the game, first off, I didn't like the gameplay with them. It was very simplistic, and some of the enemy AI was downright silly. I should have mentioned this in the gameplay, but guess what? I forgot. But I'm going to throw it in here because what I thought was really important was that one of the bigger enemies, which I don't even think I'm going to show in this video because there's only like 3 enemy types in the game, has really poor animations, and it can be cheesed really hard, very Dark Souls 1 style, where if you get up close and just circle all the way around it, it doesn't really know how to react. And I know that that's not something that is an animation thing, but ultimately it really cheesed out the animations too, and that's where I thought it got a little unfortunate for me. All in all, I think the visuals work really well. There's just a few things that I would love to be toned up. The use of color and that amazing style can only be paired with really good sound design, which I would love to talk about for a minute here, because in my opinion, the perfect feedback loop has both a visual and a sound going alongside it. And I have always believed that, especially in horror games, but here where it's eliciting such a great feeling of, as I said, that oddly satisfying TikTok account, I can't help but feel the sound of the clunk clunks as it's sucking something up, or the water flowing, and your footsteps across all different, types of grass, ground, rock, metal, fungus, anything you want, it's probably there. It all sounds really good. Even the soundtrack was really enjoyable to listen to. Of course, I'm playing the game with my headphones on most of the time, and while there's a few tracks that do pick up the momentum a little bit, it's a really laid-back musical score for the most part, and I thought that fit the theme of the game perfectly. Because I think that growth, whether it be personal growth for the characters or growth as a society, as I see it, I think that fits the slower nature of some of the songs. And I thought, as an artistic experience and expression, I thought that worked really well. Once again, I did want to mention that I felt like the weakest point of this game from a sound perspective was actually not just the voice acting, but rather the consistent quality of voice acting. There were lines, and there aren't that many characters in the game, I'm not singling out any one particular person. There were lines that were really good from any particular character, and there were lines that just felt really, really cheesy. I don't know. I mean, it strikes a hard balance, I understand that, but I don't know. There's something about the game that at times it felt like it was a CW show, and there were times that it felt like it could be, man, I don't want to commit to HBO. But there were times where the line delivery was really good, and then there were times where it wasn't. So, I mean, you win some, you lose some, you suck some, you goose some, but yeah, that's about it. And on that note, I'd like to kind of end things out with a little bit of a final verdict. The Gunk is a game that, in my opinion, has a really, really wholesome message that I think everyone should experience, if not for that alone. However, there are issues, whether it be the stale gameplay that really only saves its best tricks for the end, or some faltering small bits in quality like animations at time or voice acting. It is cemented as an experience that's at least genuinely beautiful to look at, with a really interesting attention to detail as far as color and visual feedback from dealing with the game's namesake, that makes it all super satisfying to witness, and at the very least, I think you should at least try this game if you can on Game Pass. Otherwise, I'll be honest, I don't know that I necessarily recommend this game for full price of $25. However, something like maybe $20 or even less, nowadays it goes on sale for like $10 on Steam, I definitely recommend that. I think whether it be your hours or your enjoyment, I think you're going to find some value here. But regardless, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. There's going to be more reviews like this and all types of different gaming-related videos here. Thank you for watching. My name is fallinghurts. Use my Epic creator code fallinghurts, by the way. That always helps too. And yeah, that's really about it. Goodbye.